We're good?
Oh my gosh.
All right.
Okay,
We're good?
we are good.
All
Welcome to the Map It Forward podcast, everyone.
right.
This has been the most epic adventure to make happen for none of the reasons that you think. Everything that could have possibly not gone in flow happened.
Yeah, to those not privy of the last 2 days, this has been an epic, this better be fire because, this has been an epic journey to get live here.
Oh, I
But
usually say
Lee
like
and I are now
swimming,
best
baby
friends.
Jesus.
So,
We are. We have bonded over this experience. So to give you some context, it is usually very, very straightforward to make this podcast happen. Like I email a link, the person, my guest clicks on the link, boom, no problem. Then we just go live. It has never been a problem.
I'm used to this because, so hopefully we're going to say some good, amazing things because, something's getting in the way and we've got some ground to cover here for
We
sure.
do, and literally like Google Hangouts didn't work. I was on hold with Google for over an hour yesterday. Nothing was going right. Then this morning, every time we went to do everything, computers needed to update. Skype wouldn't work. Anyway. The most incredible part about this is that we are here, we are live, and as you can see, we are not streaming the same way we normally stream, but that's totally okay. You can see both of us at the same time.
Always a unique experience. We named ourselves the Solar Flare.
We are the solar flare, the solar flare. We need to put out an album now, Josh. So, welcome Josh Wilbur to the Map It Forward podcast. I
Hello.
I am very excited about this conversation. I was excited about it before yesterday at 11 a.m. and it has taken a full 25 hours to make this happen. And I'm sure we're going to talk about some amazing shit and I can't wait.
Game on. All right.
So, you are an entrepreneur. You have your current venture is Steeped Coffee. And Steeped Coffee is not your only endeavor into entrepreneurship. I love speaking to entrepreneurs because we're crazy,
Yeah.
the right kind of crazy, right?
Yeah.
And so for me,
Good.
oh yeah, it's become obvious by now that we're the right kind of crazy for each other here. So, so tell me how many businesses have you had? How many entrepreneurial ventures have you had so far?
Yeah. I would say, I guess it's more of a permanent state of mind.
I like.
It's, I used to watch, I don't know, what were those commercials when I was a kid? And I used to be like, oh, finally somebody gets me. It was like BASF. It's like taking the things you do and doing them better. And I'm like, oh, I get it. Like,
Yep.
that's everyone asks you, what do you want to do when you get older? I'm like, that's what I want to do. But what does that mean? And apparently there's a word for it. It's like entrepreneurship and insanity. So I think it's just been, I've learned as I've gotten older that there's, you know, how I've always felt and how I've always viewed the world. It's just kind of got a name, and it tends to be, stuff like that. So
We're not the kind of people that can have jobs. I've tried. I really did try. I was in the corporate world and that didn't fit me. And then I went into coffee and music. And I loved my job, but I hated working for people because and this is the wrong way to put it, it just didn't seem like they were thinking forward enough. They were so trapped into how do I make money? How do I make money? How do I make money? I'm like, but having a business is about so much more than making money.
yeah,
And it frustrated the shit out of me. I'm like, I just can't work for people unless I'm working for the right person, like someone as crazy as me. And I get to watch that brilliance unfold in front of me. Like, and when I say brilliance, I mean the person who's hungry to use business as a way to create. what
Yeah.
their visions are in their mind.
Yeah, I've never really viewed like I remember even in college I was always kind of like, damn the man, sort of like corporation type stuff. I didn't want to pay attention to my marketing classes, and then I went into marketing, and
Of course.
yeah, and things like that. But it's like I don't think money's ever been a focus of mine. I view success as a much more comprehensive thing
Yep.
than financially. It's like being able to do things you love, being able to make a difference, following your passions, being involved with what you're doing, like feeling engaged, having a group of people around you who you're, spending 8, 10, 12 hours a day with at times. And that being, an environment that you love, and not feeling like you're going to work every day, but just going to get to pursue your passions. So whenever I feel like I'm in a job, I give myself about a month or two or 2 weeks time tick. It's like, okay, like it's just instantly torture, and I've always kind of um, resided outside of most people's boxes as far as school or whatever it may be. But I guess I've always been kind of an inventor. I always kind of brainstorm ways to improve things. Uh, you know, um, uh, I'd always have drawings as a kid. In high school, as say like I came up with twin tip skis and made like models out of them before, like 5 years before they actually launched that sort of thing, like for snow skiing and like
Did you know at that time you were like, I'm going to make this happen? I'm just going to take this and I'm going to try and do something. Or did you hold yourself back?
at that point I didn't really I wasn't really equipped or in that kind of environment. I'm from it's from Maine, the East Coast. It's more like standard like sports and you know school, and I didn't I hadn't grown up in like Silicon Valley or even known what that meant or that
Yeah.
people actually like have ideas and follow them, and it's like um, for me that kind of came more once I got to school and started traveling, and it just became more and more apparent. I've always just kind of thought a little bit different. I have some different learning stuff, which really equipped me, like on one spectrum from being able to conceptualize, like taking a problem and being able to sort it out
Yeah.
and in a very calm manner versus like I read slow, you know what I mean, sort of thing. But
Same here.
I can listen to a book on I can't listen to a book on tape unless it's 4x. So it's
Wow. You're
funny
a
'cause,
super processor.
yeah, so I can read like a 10-hour book in 2.5 hours listening to it, but
Yep.
reading it like you know uh, painful, or I mean listening to it on like a normal speed is like painful for me. So like little things like that I've learned about myself along the way where I'm like, oh, okay, I'm just my mind works a little different. That's okay.
That's fascinating. I've spent the last, I guess, 10 years trying to figure out why I was different.
Yeah,
And I thought there was something wrong with me. And it's this idea of like, no, it's not that there's something wrong with you. You just have to do things differently. But because I do think differently, I'm an ideas and problem solver person.
yeah,
And I I don't absorb things by reading them.
yeah,
I have to read them 15 or 20 times before it sinks in. I studied science at university.
yeah,
That didn't work. If you explain something to me once and I remembered it for life.
yeah. That's fun.
But if I read it, I couldn't grasp the concept whatsoever. But
Yeah,
just explaining it to me once, I was good to go and I could pick it apart super speed.
yeah, that's fun. I mean, we're all made different, right?
Right.
So it's
Yeah. And this
like,
concept of grasping that, it's like, oh, it's okay that you think like this. And then thinking, but I'm not going to fit into a job like that.
yeah.
That's not
And
going
if
to be
we're
right.
all made the same, then there'd be nothing. I mean, it
There's
would
a
just
bunch of politicians who are trying to push that agenda, mate.
yeah,
They only want the same, and that's it.
yeah. I mean, there's good stuff out of general education and all that kind of stuff. But I love it when people branch out and really embrace the things that make them unique and find out what those things are, and then find a way to really like bring value through those gifts that, I mean, everyone's made unique and has talent. So it's like just being able to, and that's kind of fun too of having a team of people is seeing those talents in people. And one of my employees, Daniel, he always talks, everyone has a superpower.
Uh-huh.
And he tries to find out what their superpower is and pull it out of them. And I think that's really inspiring. And try to do that a little bit as well. And, you know,
How do you do that and help people navigate away from their insecurities?
I don't know. I'm to a fault, pretty emotionally intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
I joke with my wife that if I have to get from, if our lives depended on getting back from A to B or B to A, we're probably doomed. But along the way, I'll know how everyone's feeling.
Yes, I
So,
hear you.
so
Oh,
to,
yes.
to a fault, I probably am a little too aware of, how people are feeling. So, um, a lot of stuff from a leadership standpoint tends to be I've got a big faith background, so I draw a lot from that,
Mm-hmm.
and just trying to be a servant leader is like pretty challenging. It kind of flips everything upside down. Like our org chart here is bottom up, not top down.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody is supporting people above them. So when you get employees, you're not above them and they're below you. You're below them, supporting them and lifting them up. And
That's
how they
great.
do is based on how you're supporting them. So if they're failing, there's probably better ways that we can help support and like work with them and stuff like that. So there's like all kinds of things that come into leadership for me from that perspective of like, how can I serve people, honor people, but also like, from like a servant leadership type standpoint. And it's fun. It's different. It really changes things up.
Has leadership come easy to you?
Um, I would have said yes,
I know
but
you're better than that. And
but
being an emotionally super intelligent person that way, I get that. I've never heard it put that way, like to a fault. And I'm like, oh my God, that's it.
yeah,
That's the problem. It's like I can see pretty much everything I need to know about you speaking with you for about 30 seconds.
yeah. And I probably used to say I'm a great leader because in situations I tend to lead. Um, naturally. But now that I'm a leader that is running
Yeah.
a company, I would say I'm pretty terrible at it and I have a lot to learn. you
I
know.
can absolutely relate. Like it probably works. Well, I know I've learnt this from having Elixir Specialty Coffee the last 3 years. My emotional intelligence is so intimidating to people that it makes them, I don't know, if they feel exposed to a point where
Yeah.
they're like, I can't hide anything from her.
Yeah.
And that's not good.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to curb it.
Yeah. No. Yeah. It's the whole dynamic. I mean, there's all kinds of different leadership, right? I mean,
Yep.
there's household leadership, how you are at home, and relationships around your friends and then at work. And the things I'm learning mostly at work right now are more of a corporate growth level of when I'm working with a couple people, it's a lot easier, I think. I have things to work on still with communication and not just running and doing my own thing and expecting everyone to know that I'm
Mind reader.
crushing
Expecting, yeah.
I got to tell people, hey, by the way. Um, but but uh, but things we're working on here always is like defining our culture, our ethos, defining those things, not just from like a company outside standpoint, like we did that pretty early on, which was awesome, but also from an internal standpoint, like
Hmm.
how we talk with each other, like small things like direct communication and being courageous through being vulnerable. So, but also being able to receive someone's vulnerability, and
Are
so
you familiar with Brene Brown's work?
yeah, I am. Yeah, my wife. We watched a Netflix special a couple of weeks ago. I was
Yeah,
like,
it's just she's
and
just
I was like,
released it.
this is great, So we've incorporated some of that actually recently, just to make sure everyone's kind of on that level. Um,
She's the world leading research on vulnerability and
yeah,
shame.
yeah, it's amazing
Yeah.
stuff. So, and I'm hopeful that that kind of thing just continues to, it's like any relationship, unless you're pouring energy into it, it's not thriving to where it could. So any of that kind of stuff that we can do internally here, from a company standpoint, is just going to make everyone's lives that much better and the company better and the whole, process better. So, and that, like little things that we're working on too is like, you know, praise in public, criticize in private. You being from Australia, you kind of get like from my time I spent there about a year.
Where were you?
So I was in Sydney
Uh-huh.
and then traveled around a bunch too.
Where in Sydney? I'm a Sydney girl.
So Bondi,
That's where I lived for 5 years before I
oh,
moved here.
amazing. Yeah, I was in Bondi Junction,
Yeah, you
and
know
then
the park, Waverley Park?
yeah,
I lived just by there.
oh, that's amazing. Yeah, I
It
love
was
it.
not terrible at
Yeah,
all.
yeah, I love it. I was very lucky to be there for a while. So the things I learned about Australians was, if you don't have to talk yourself up, if you're that good, someone else will do it for you.
Oh yeah, we have tall poppy syndrome over there, and it's very serious. It's
Yeah.
it's a really big thing. Have you heard of tall poppy syndrome?
Uh-uh.
You know, in a poppy field, all the poppies somehow just know to grow all to one level. Sometimes, every now and then, you get one poppy that pops up like really high above all the other poppies in the field. And so, what the farmer will do is they'll go across and they'll just cut down all the tall poppies so that everything else is at the same
That's
level. So
hilarious.
that when they go and harvest the poppies, they just have to go across and cut at one level.
Yeah.
In Australia have tall poppy syndrome. So anyone who seems to be excelling above the
Yeah.
rest of the community, everyone will cut them down.
Yeah. That's the other thing I learned is there's nothing tall enough that can't be cut in half.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Australians are fucking great at it. They will wait to see you do really well just so that they can cut you down.
Yeah, but it's also I did learn that that's also out of love there too. And if you can take that well, it goes a long ways. Which
Yeah, I don't know about that.
yeah,
it's
that's what they
it's
told me to do.
yeah, right. I think it unfortunately works different with the genders, especially in the coffee industry.
Yeah,
The coffee and music industries, I remember when I launched my first EP, and it had this real Evanescence vibe about it. It was about 11 years ago now. And all the major labels over there just said, go straight to America. Everyone's going to hate you here because they love you too much.
hmm,
And you'll just get crucified over here. But if a guy did it, it would have been fine. Same thing in the coffee industry. If the number of people that said to me when I launched Elixir, the
yeah.
number of them that said to me in Australia, it would have been so great if it was a man that launched this company.
Oh wow. Yeah, I have a lot of respect for women in business, and I can't even pretend to um, understand what it's like going through that. But a lot of respect for women just stepping in and owning it and doing what you can. So
Thank you. I'm
hats off
I'm
to you.
trying to get to a point in my process where I personally am trying to remove my gender from the
Equate.
equation,
Yeah,
because I don't want it to be an issue at all.
yeah,
I'm a very proud woman.
yeah,
I'm proud to be a woman, but the things that I do in business aren't because I'm a woman.
yeah,
It's because of my mind. I'm a super curious, highly emotionally intelligent woman who loves solving problems and trying to execute on ideas.
yeah,
There's nothing that's gender laden about that statement.
yeah, yeah,
And so, what my mindset is now, imagine if I don't need anybody else to do it, but imagine if I remove my gender from the equation and stop worrying about being a woman in business and just be a human in business. I wonder how that will change the dynamic of how I approach the relationships I have in business, in our industry, being mostly male dominated, And I wonder if that will then go on to change the dynamic between the way the opposite sex reacts to me in business.
Yeah. Well, you'll have to let me know how you're sensing that goes as you step into that. So
We're connected for life after the
no,
last 2
we're
days.
in. So this continues. So
But yeah, it's going to be a fun one um, to watch because I found myself. It started when I was a little kid, and I'm of an Arab background. I was born in Australia, but my parents are Syrian, both of them.
yep.
And there's a very clear distinction between the way men and women should act and behave in all situations. And I only remembered this the other day. I used to be fascinated by the etiquette under which conversation happened in the Middle Eastern culture. And when you're in a group, in a room filled with people, very quickly it's established who is the most senior person in the room, who has the right to speak, who doesn't have the right to speak, the order the speak happens. It's a great kind of, and a lovely
Yeah.
kind of,
Explore like
yeah.
decoding.
Well, it's fascinating to watch how this unspoken kind of dance in words happens.
Yeah.
And I remember trying to enter a conversation once as a little girl, and the look of horror on everyone's face, like, who the fuck does she think she is to think she has a right to speak? She's a kid and she's a girl.
Yeah.
And I remember one time a few years later, my father said to me, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" I said, "I want to have conversations for a job."
There you go.
That was really important to me. But I always found that no matter, I didn't remember that I said that until a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, which was really crazy because this podcast is my most favorite thing of everything that I do. But I always found that going through, whether it be through high school, when we got to do extra subjects, I did electronics.
Yeah.
The only girl in the class. We went to a college outside of school during school time. I did electronics, and the other 40 students were males. And
Yeah.
then I went and studied science at university, one of very few females in the class. And then I go on to the corporate world, and there you're judged as a woman, and coffee industry, one of very few girls, and music industry, you had to like get your boobs out and do all of that if you wanted to be successful, and I refused to do it. And
Yeah.
so of course you get all this pushback, and I kept thinking it can't fucking be this hard, possibly in this time, in this era. Surely we're over this by now.
Yeah.
Surely we're over this. We're not.
And
we're
yeah.
better we're better off. we
Yeah.
we absolutely, I mean, my success I only comes because of the shoulders of the women that came before me, that I have the honor and privilege of standing on.
Yeah.
And it's my job to have strong enough shoulders that are worthy of the next woman to stand on in that in like powering through business. But
Yeah.
you kind of look at it and you think, all right, I think it's time we remove this and stop making it about whether Josh is a guy and Lee is a girl, and this is
Yeah.
part of what determines whether they're going to be successful. I want to see Josh do as amazing as Josh can do because he's got great fucking ideas.
Yeah. And the cool thing is there's common ground when you meet in that place because starting anything new is really hard.
You can say fucking hard.
and,
It's
and,
fine.
al- and,
You
and
can say
almost
that.
and almost impossible, it's like so there's this like, hey, yeah, we're going through this together, and
Yeah.
yeah, you get those same experiences I get, and that's a really neat place to be because when you're on the ground level of things, and paving new ideas and new concepts, and there's a lot of stuff, a lot of people that come against you, period.
Did you
um,
experience a lot of that?
yeah, I mean, pretty much always, right? Like I've
So
got
I'm
I've got
sorry you went through that, but it's great to hear it because it's not just me.
oh yeah, I mean, I've got multiple patents and hilarious stories and things that like you know that are super even embarrassing. Like like my friends still laugh about these like surf mats I made and twin tip board, like all this stuff, that I've,
Well, they're funny until you realize that they're ahead of their time. And then the time turns up when they're perfectly,
yeah.
the
But
market's ready for them.
yeah, or, it's like, and there's always that, like, the cliche, story on LinkedIn to motivate you. That's like, this person had 20 failures and
Right.
until they didn't, and then that one thing was successful, right? And you're like, just keep going, and but
It's so easier
feels,
said than done.
it feels kind of like self like inflicting, pain because you keep going and you can't help it, right? Or else you probably wouldn't be doing it in the first place because it's just kind of who you are, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, you have things that you want to fix or ideas you want to do, and you keep doing them, and then eventually you learn how to pay attention to that little voice that like directs you and hears feedback from people in the right ways, not the gang mentality of like, yeah, everyone's so excited about anything I say, but
Right.
like actually the things that are catching on and received well. And then you can really get some maturity and wisdom on the things that are worth pursuing and learning to say no on the things that aren't, versus just rabbit trailing down every idea. So, for me, one of the most important things I have is a journal where I can write it down and put it to the side and not think about it anymore because um, it's really important to stay focused too, or else you don't get anything done. So, um,
You know something interesting about the journals? Excuse me, I had been keeping journals pretty much every day for the last 12 years and maybe more than that. And my songbooks were becoming journals as well. I
yeah,
would be very intensely emotional with my songs. When I just went back to Australia, I decided to get rid of my storage unit. I'm a minimalist,
yeah.
and so I took the songbooks and shredded everything.
Oh,
I shredded
wow.
all my journals, all my songbooks, because I wanted to erase my attachment to my history.
Wow. That's brave. I would have done the same thing, but I would have photographed it all first.
Right. Let me tell you, I considered scanning it all first, and then I thought, like, if you're going to go through the exercise about being attached to the person you were in previous versions of you, you genuinely have to let this go.
Yeah.
And I felt this weird dance across this line that was absolutely petrified
Yeah.
of letting all of this go. I was reading it while I was shredding it. I'm like, I can't believe I'm shredding this song. This song was listened to like 10 million times on YouTube. Or I can't believe I'm shredding this journal entry that was from the day that I left my husband. Like,
Yeah.
and shredding all of these things,
Wow.
thinking, why are you doing this exactly? But the release and freedom that I felt once it was finished, it took me
Yeah.
8 hours to shred it all.
Oh my. Wow.
And God bless my friend Jamie Berry for allowing me to use his shredder. We almost broke it. There was so much to shred. But the freedom that I got from it, and I know I'm gonna be I'm going to go back when somebody decides. I've had two filmmakers ask me if they could write a script around my life so far.
Oh,
And
wow.
that was before I shredded everything. And now that I've shredded everything, I'm like, another filmmaker is going to come at me at some point and be like, so could we have like all your journals? And I'll be, sorry, no, they've been shredded. Nothing, all gone. You'll have to take it from memory. So I now have this, it's funny, I have this added motivation to keep my mind sharp the rest of my life so
Yeah.
that I can remember all of the things.
Oh, nice. That's I see. I don't have that luxury because um, I say one of my I was joking around with you earlier is one of my greatest strengths in continuing on through some of these crazy trials that come with starting something new is a short-term memory.
Oh, I'm so jealous.
So, like I just went through hell yesterday. I don't even remember that.
Oh,
I'm
it doesn't, no,
optimistic and
it
ready to go,
happened. It
So
went, it came, It's gone. I'm free from it. That's one of the trials and tribulations of emotional intelligence when you remember things, because you're trying to dissect. Well, this is my experience anyway. People are like, you hang on to shit for too long. I'm like, I'm not hanging on to it, trying to understand it and dissect it and learn from it and grow from it and understand how I can do better next time so
Yeah.
that I can be more supportive of somebody's experience. That's my over empathy working there.
Yeah.
But fuck, if I could just not remember it, that would just be
Dor-
wonderful.
just a little touch of Dory.
Just a little touch, just a tiny little
Not too
sprinkle.
much.
Even selective Dory, that would be
Yeah.
great. Just some of those emotions, you're like, oh, I really don't want to have to. I don't want to have to think about what it's going to be like to dissect this human's clusterfuckery.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm on the other spectrum. I have to remember to be mad about something like, oh, come on, try. You got to protect yourself. Like, don't let this happen again. You got to really remember this one. Yeah. Versus,
So
all
that's where
right.
all the writing down works.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you ever get worried people are going to find them?
No, no. It's no one can read my writing.
Oh, lucky you. Lucky you. I I remember laughing and saying to somebody, so listen, if I die, you don't have to worry. I've shredded everything. There is no evidence of anything of how to do elixir or anything anywhere.
That's hilarious. You're like, good.
Talking about elixir, let's talk about steeped coffee.
Sure, let's do it.
Show us the steeped coffee.
Here's a pack.
If for somebody who, if you're listening to this rather than watching, Josh is holding up a sealed, like it's what it would fit into your palm, right?
Yeah, so this is yeah, it's like
It's the
four,
size,
4 by 5, something like
yeah.
that, but 4.5 by 4 inches or something like that. Um,
Australians, please convert at your will.
yep. 200 millimeters by 120 foot. No, I have no idea.
Of course
Um,
you don't. I was very impressed.
I do actually know, but decided not to finish it. Um, so, uh, yeah, so there's this, we call this a steeped pack. And
Hmm.
then inside the steeped pack is a steeped bag, which is essentially a steeped coffee bag. And that is a special filter called a full immersion filter, served in a very recognizable and intuitive way to brew, which is like it's like making tea.
A tea
Um,
bag.
so it's I try to clarify this. It's a very we've done a lot of innovation to make it steeped coffee and gotten completely away from coffee in a tea bag. It's very much different
Oh,
from
really?
a lot of things that have made it possible to actually make it taste good.
Tell me how.
So just from the brewing method in general, you basically it's as simple as you put it in your cup, um, then you pour hot water over it. So it's like a pour over.
Uh huh.
Um, I don't know how warm my water is because we've been kind of
We've been trying to get this happening for a
going
minute
through things
today.
a little bit. I might have to warm it back up, but you pour over, um, and then so it starts off like a pour over. As long as you put the bag in first, and you pour over, you're pretty much good to go. I like to give it a dip and a dunk.
Is that on the packaging? Give it a dip and a dunk.
It's I think we just left it at dunk. Dunk
Okay.
the bag for 15 seconds for added or longer for added strength.
It should be one of your t-shirts.
Yeah,
Steeped coffee.
dip and
A dip and dunk.
so once you get going on it, you'll start to see actually crema form on the
Oh,
top
wow.
and in the bag, and it'll become light brown, and the whole bag blooms. The coffee blooms as you're giving it a dip and a dunk, and so it basically goes from a pour over to like a French press, and then you let it steep for 5 minutes. Essentially, that's how long your water takes to cool down from just below boiling. So I do about 205 degrees, pour it over the bag, dip and dunk, and then let it cool down, and then you're ready to drink it. And you don't have to take the bag out. It's not like tea where it gets bitter. It actually continues to get better, and then eventually it just plateaus. We put
Okay. It
we
doesn't over extract?
no, so it's a lot of baristas will say it's just like, or Q tasters will say it's just like cupping. It's like single serve cupping in a sense because
Okay.
you've got the perfect amount of coffee. So we do a 15-to-1 ratio for SCA, the golden standard sort of thing. For so when people are cupping, it actually starts to really develop and get the full flavor and the whole experience of the beans and all the notes and all that kind of stuff from like 10 to 25 minutes. So when people are really trying to taste coffees in that kind of setting, um, it's really changing a lot early on. So for me, one of my favorite things I like to do when I'm using the steeped method of coffee is, once the water's cool enough to drink, I just start sipping it. And in the beginning, you get the real bright notes,
Hmm.
the acidity and the fruity stuff, like come out more. And then as it steeps longer, you start getting the deeper chocolates and caramels, and like some of the sweeter stuff comes out, and it really balances the cup. So unlike, you know, if you're doing, some kind of machine where it's like dripping water or putting through, like a pot or something like that, it's basically trying to force water through a
Through
small
the grind.
coffee for 30 seconds at pressure. And you're literally getting your water's coming in contact with your coffee for like 30 seconds at max,
Hmm.
sometimes seconds. So this method really lets you experience the full flavor of the coffee, the way it's supposed to be enjoyed, and you're actually able to, kind of tune it in. Everyone has their steeped like habits now. Everyone's got the way
Ooh.
they do it, and so I always love hearing it. For me, I put it in, I pour water over it, dip and dunk, get the crema, and it looks amazing. And then
Uh-huh.
as soon as I can start sipping it, I just, I start seeing how it changes, and I experience it. My wife, she's 7 minutes on the dot. She takes it out. She's puts her, whatever she does. Other people will, do very specific things too. So everyone kind of likes doing it their own way. But the cool thing is too, it's a brewing method. It's not just a coffee or like a one product gimmick. It's a new brewing method. So you think pour over, French press, AeroPress, steeped coffee. Steeped coffee is the new brewing method of what we've developed, and we've done it in a way where all of these innovations come together in a way that makes it really unique. And it actually, for the first time, we believe it combines the quality that the coffee, specialty coffee, deserves, as well as the convenience that everyone's kind of wanting
Looking for.
or looking for.
With like, do you know Robert Tim's coffee? Is that a brand over here?
Not really. So I've
You saw it in Australia?
yeah, through my R&D, I've checked out New Zealand, Australia, and stuff like that, and it's
They
very,
have they
yeah,
have those. How is this different?
that's coffee in a tea bag, and there's some people doing that around the globe.
Right.
It's not that big, and it's not that good.
Well,
Uh,
it's definitely not that good.
yeah, it's small portions. So some of the things we do is our filters. I mean, I think we tried like uh, over 200 filters from all around the planet,
Wow.
all different materials. We finally found kind of created the perfect combination that's a hybrid of like a mesh and a woven. And it's called a full immersion filter, steeped full immersion filter. And it's basically lets enough water pass in
Hmm.
to extract the coffee, and then it keeps the bean, like the grinds, in at the exact right micron of grinds that needs to have the right extraction for that portion of coffee, and then it lets the flavor back out. If you think about a tea bag,
Yep.
a traditional one, woven, you put coffee grounds in there and you give it a dip and a dunk, and then they're all on the bottom of your cup, and there's nothing left in the bag. Or if you think about a coffee filter on the opposite side, it's meant to think of like a pour over filter. It's meant to keep the water in
Yep.
and then drip through slowly. So if you're not pouring water into it and it's actually closed off and it's a bag, uh, it's not letting water into it because it's meant to keep water in. So it's also meant to keep water out.
What's the shape of it when it's not wet?
It's rectangle.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I need to see it visually because I can't see how it's different from like those Robert Tim's tea bags.
Yeah, so here's a cat and cloud version.
Uh-huh.
Um, we work with a lot of different roasters. We love cat and cloud. We're in Santa Cruz, so they were involved really early on with testing and all that kind of stuff. So here's a bag, uh,
Uh-huh.
and it's a good amount. It's the right amount of coffee. When we started out, it was way too little, and we've upped it to 14.2 grams, which is
Is it
about
14.2 for
yeah.
every coffee?
Yeah, for the most part, that's where we're at. It's about a half ounce, so it's 8 ounces, about 15 to 1 ratio water to coffee. But sometimes we'll play around with stuff too when it's within the process on certain blends and roast profiles and stuff like that. We'll adjust them as they need. But for the most part, that's the standard where we start. So
Yeah,
yeah,
wow.
yeah, and
We're
then
gonna have
so.
to do some swapsies. I'm gonna send you some elixir. You're gonna send me some of that. And
Oh, for sure. And then, and then another thing here is this outer packaging is compostable, and it's
wonderful.
using all renewable and compostable materials. So we started off with that right from the beginning. Um, let's see. And basically decided early on as a company, we're gonna not add to the problem. We're gonna help solve it.
What's
Um,
the material that bag's made out of?
This is a film, so it's flexible film. It's a laminate of several things to basically give us all the performance we need, and barrier and oxygen, moisture, all that kind of stuff, but also seal really well, and be able to be used across the board, get printed on. So I mean, the whole process has been pretty crazy.
I can
Here's a
imagine.
here's a couple other fun ones, Dark Horse and Dune and a new barn one coming out, and there's there's a whole bunch of roasters we work with, so it's been really fun to kind of get that part set up. But just going back to the technology, these are all actually nitrous sealed too.
So it's
So
not glue, right?
no, so on the filter bag itself, we don't use any glue or staples. We
That's
use
so wonderful.
ultrasonic sealing. So you'll notice there's no like big thick border around the edge. So we're not wasting unnecessary amount of material
That
from an
makes sense.
environmental standpoint, but it also keeps it really clean. And then for the size, we totally maximize it, and we're able to fit a lot amount of coffee in with a low profile bag.
I
Um,
think it's fantastic. I'm really focused on brain toxicity at the moment,
yeah,
and the glue that's in some tea bags, the metal that they use in some of the tea bags with the staples,
yeah,
is becoming something that functional medicine doctors are trying to tell people that they need to think about,
yeah.
because these big tea companies, they're just going to go for the cheapest option available, and you know
I know
the
all
green
about
one, and take, yeah, I can imagine.
when we started up early, it was, hey, you can do this for this many cents or this for this many more cents. And, for us, it made sense to spend more cents because it was the right thing to do. Um,
Yeah.
and that's pretty much a big part of our business is we have some internal, sayings like coffee without compromise, business without compromise,
Yep.
purpose beyond profits.
Yep.
And it really just comes down to not doing business as usual, but doing what's right.
Do
And
no harm, things
yeah,
like
like
that.
we're talking to investors and we're like, hey, what's your exit strategy? And where do you want to go with this? And um, the first answer always is we want to make the right decisions. And they're not always going to be the right decisions or the best decisions, but the goal is that with the information we currently have, we're making the right decisions based off of that information.
And
And
based on the learning that you've had up until now.
yeah, but then also what you have to pair that with is not to stay in your current level of education, but to constantly learn so you can constantly be educated on better ways to do things.
Yeah.
So we're always challenging ourselves to improve what we're doing. So like this film we had here, we launched out fully compostable. This is phase one for us. So we started at something that was unheard of in the industry. And then we just launched out our phase two structure, which reduces the overall materials being used and actually increases performance and uses more renewable materials and has shorter supply chains. And so there's things that we're constantly doing that people aren't even aware of within our improving our own stuff that's already above and beyond what other people are doing.
That's
Um,
so awesome.
and we have phase three and four already planned out for the film, and it's going to be bonkers. Our phase two film actually just got best new product award at Coffee Expo in combination
Congratulations.
with the method. So yeah, that was really exciting. That was really good validation and great feedback just on the method in whole, and um, you know, and just people getting really excited about it. For me, a couple motivations when we were getting started with this whole thing was, how not to wreck the planet. How to,
It's
yeah,
a challenge.
there you go.
That's the
Like,
worst part about it is we're using an ag product.
yeah, how to do something, but not, especially from a single serve aspect. I mean,
Yeah.
talk about a challenge. How do you do single serve and not just waste? Convenience is wasteful.
It's so funny you say that. We have so we only use glass bottles for elixir, and we have these rolls of labels back from when we were using a different size bottle, and we weren't getting it from before when we were printing on the bottle, which is what we usually do.
Yeah,
And I have a real problem with throwing out plastic.
yeah,
I don't want to have it if we can't fully consume it.
yeah,
And we have about 2,000 labels left of these stickers.
yeah.
And so I was talking with my team about how this is really bothering me. These labels are going to sit here and nothing's going to, they're totally usable. But
Yeah,
because we've moved already over to the system of printing on the bottles in order to save plastic,
right.
what are we going to do? So I made the decision. Sorry?
Optics. It's the battle of optics
It
versus
absolutely is. And so,
true,
exactly.
yeah,
Like, sticking by our values. We're trying, even this plastic lid, we're trying to replace it with something that's not plastic. So then nothing on the bottle is plastic. But as a conscious capitalist, I have a problem with the fact that we've got these labels and they haven't been used.
yeah,
So I made the decision that we're going to order as many bottles that haven't been printed on
yeah,
as we have labels. We're going to use them.
yeah. That's fun.
It's going to look different for a couple months, but that's fine because it's about it's about consuming it properly. And
Yeah,
it makes no sense that we use this plastic and got these labels printed if it's just going to sit there on a shelf and one day we're going to throw it out. I'm not okay with that.
yeah. No, it makes sense.
And it doesn't look as good as when it's printed around the bottle and much bigger and all that. And I get it. But at the same time, the part of me that wants to do my part for the planet in every possible way and opportunity is like, you got to fucking swallow this, Lee. Like, just do it. And then you'll be fine with it.
Yeah,
But until that happens, I mean, and these are the kinds of things that are difficult as an entrepreneur to kind of justify to yourself.
yeah, yeah. So those decisions come up all the time, and as we're navigating those things, it's just important to say, like, yeah, what can we do in this situation? What can we do in this situation? What can we do
Yeah.
in future situations? And so, yeah, we're always trying to look at that, especially with single serve coffee. I mean, you're like, we're in the world of pods, and we did some math, and uh, from I think it's 2002 or 2002 to now, there's been enough pods consumed sitting side by side to wrap around the planet 130 times.
That's some scary shit.
And that's like right around the equator type action. And that's predominantly in landfills. And no one knows how to break this stuff down, even if, they're not
Yeah.
that efficient. So it's people love convenience. We see a huge trend in convenience with coffee, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's you go into convenience stores and they don't even have a coffee section anymore, just a single serve. And we
Yep.
see a huge trend on specialty too, um,
Oh, it's
where
booming. It's
where for
absolutely booming.
where for the first time, specialty coffee is over 50% of consumption, opposed to non-specialty coffee.
Where's that number come from?
Um, Online sources, resource. I
Do you
have to
know?
find out
Do you
which
know
site.
how much coffee Nestle is selling?
Probably a lot.
6,000 cups a second.
Oh, yeah, it's crazy. Yeah,
Yeah.
here, I get up my all my numbers are on my.
Yeah, 6,000 cups a second. That's from we had someone from Nestle on the podcast telling us that, which is kind of insane. And they are absolutely not
Yeah,
not doing specialty coffee. It's definitely on the rise, but from the numbers that we had on the podcast by someone from Ecom, they're the largest mover of coffee around the world. I think it's somewhere around 5% of specialty coffee versus commodity coffee is produced around the globe.
yeah. And I was talking, and there's a lot of interesting factors that come in around all that.
Yeah.
We're looking right now at the general market because it's so hammered right now by pricing. Um,
Yeah.
where especially coffee, we kind of started in specialty specifically and have stayed there, because you're able to focus, on paying the farmers well,
Hmm.
for quality, and then oftentimes directly. So all of our coffee that we do for our own brand is direct trade, 2, 3 times fair trade values on the market, and some of the highest quality, pointed coffees, and specialty being over, the
That was
85.
going to be my next question. How are you defining specialty?
Yeah, so it's over a certain point. It's like wine, but for
Yeah.
coffee.
So over 80 or the old
85
so you're
is
doing it over 85.
yeah,
The
typically.
cut the standard definition now with from SCA is over 80.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
we're at 85 still. So,
Yeah.
everything's like 86, 87 type. You pay a lot more per point. It's a little bit different than wine. It's not the 93 points. It's it's more in the 80s. But and then also, especially, I think is roughly defined as like the top 10% of quality coffee in the world. Typically is called specialty. So some people will define it as that too. Um,
But the
but
technical definition is anything that's scoring above 80.
yeah,
How are you sourcing? Are you sourcing through Cat and Cloud or are you going direct to
we have
um,
we have several for our own. So steeped coffee it's we started off with it's a brewing method. It's
mhm.
also a technology and a process that we license out. And it's also started off as a brand because we needed to, it didn't exist in the market. So we had to bring it into the market. Bless you.
Excuse
Bless
me.
you.
This
Yeah.
is the only time it's terrible that I have a super sensitive mic. Thank you.
No
Go
worries.
ahead.
I know. So we brought it into the market to create a space that didn't exist, introduce this new method,
Hmm.
and then we intentionally kept it very basic. So it's light, medium, dark, or French roast extra dark, and decaf. So
Okay.
try it out. Here it is. And then as we build all of our licensed partnerships, we're at over 65 now.
That's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, it's pretty fun. We collect all these, different packs, and it's like collecting baseball cards now, but it's like stuff we're actually making. It's really fun.
Yeah.
Every day is trying new ones that we're creating, and it's really fun. Um, but we don't have a huge catalog of our coffees because it's the steep method is the focus, steep coffee being the method.
Hmm.
Our own brand around that is really just to like give people an excuse to try it and have it. And as we're building out all the variety, so our whole catalog is really all of our licensed roasters, all of our licensed partners. You're getting to try their single origins, their Guatemalans, their Afro, like all the different
Hmm.
stuff. Um, so I always joke around. It's like if you don't like a steeped coffee that you've tried, we'll just try a different coffee because
Right.
not everyone likes every coffee you try. People have preferences on different coffees they like. So I always say you're either doing it wrong or you're not trying a coffee you like, but it's a brewing method that at this point we feel really confident on. Um,
How do
We
you, sorry, just to go in further on the sourcing. So is there a version of steeped coffee that's steeped coffee by steeped coffee?
Yeah, so that's we have
That was the first one you
yeah,
mentioned.
our
Okay,
steep
right.
coffee packs. They come in 5 different colors, and that's kind of the
Yeah.
branding right there. It's
How do you source the coffee for that?
that's all silent partnerships.
So with importers or with farms?
um, Through direct relationships we have
With
uh,
roasters?
with local roasters,
I can
some
read between the lines there.
yeah, yeah. Some of the top roasters I would say that exist, and doing practices exactly how we would want to be practicing our sourcing. So
So you're
all
counting
our
on
stuff is
their
yeah,
integrity in buying with the supply chain.
yeah,
And yeah,
all
that
of our
makes sense.
stuff is direct trade, direct relationships, going to origin, checking for quality, all of that kind of stuff, and that's how we're managing our coffee for our own brand. But keeping the focus really on our roasters for expanding out the method
Yep, that's
through
awesome.
all of their, which was an early something we wanted to do early on too was empower and equip roasters, especially coffee companies, because no one would grind their coffee and put it on a shelf because they want to take it off the shelf in a week, and you
Yeah.
can't have grocery store, like it just doesn't work in the market.
Well, you can, but it degrades the quality of the product pretty quickly.
Exactly. As soon as you grind it, it starts going bad. Once oxygen is exposed to coffee, it oxidates,
Yep.
and then it starts turning, right?
Have you
So,
tested those theories? Because
yeah,
there's a bunch of people in coffee and in science who have started testing those kinds of hypotheses and have tested extraction rates based on grind and whatnot. And they're people doing cool stuff with freezing, grinding frozen, and letting it sit.
yeah. I
Have you
mean,
done those kinds of experiments?
yeah. I mean, the options that people had were for convenience was really like pods or freeze dried or some kind of instant
Yeah.
version, drinking or grinds type of thing. And so when we were developing this new method, it was how can we get this so it's like having a fresh cup of coffee at your favorite coffee shop.
That's
And we
exciting.
and we call it barista approved, and it's because it is. And we've had this stuff internally tested to answer that is, we test everything from packaging strength, seals, making sure no oxygen's leak,
Yeah.
or nitrogen sealing. So we actually produce our own nitrogen for sustainability at 99.99%, and that extra 0.9% was very expensive. Uh, and we kind of go all out, every detail matters sort of thing. Don't let the perfect get in the way of the good, but if it can be perfect, you might as well
Yeah,
try.
right.
So
Keep edging that little bit closer.
so we test that. We test for our nitrogen. We test for TDS and coffee and aroma and freshness.
You
And
weren't a coffee dude before this.
now I just picked it up. I've always been
Gotcha.
interested in coffee, and I've
Yeah,
known.
but you didn't know what the fuck TDS was before that, did you?
No, no, but when I learned about it, I was really into it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I dive in and geek out pretty hard on things.
Good for you.
My most recent thing is the packaging. I'll get into that in a little bit.
Yeah.
But when it came to the testing, we're not just self-validating. We're setting this stuff off to like global taste testing teams from some of the largest brands in the globe. We're having it tested at universities through some of our partners hopping in and say, hey, we want to check out this method, but we won't do it unless it's validated for 6 months shelf life. And so they're actually testing it at a university for freshness, oxygen, barrier, TDS, strength, everything, comparing it to how it brews against their own coffees in the shop, and calling us every week and said, yep, still good
That's
for six
awesome.
for 6 months. So when we say barista approved, this is people who really care about the quality of their coffee
Yeah.
and who are willing to say, you know what, we'll put our name on this. This finally gives us something that we can offer to our customers is convenient, but doesn't sacrifice in the name of convenience on quality or what we'd want to see, happen to a freshly roasted coffee. So, I mean, at the end of the day, when you spend all this time and money caring about who you partner with, having someone grow the beans, handpick the beans, process the beans, ship them to you, you roast them. Um, why would you ruin them from that point forward before making a cup of coffee?
Yeah.
So when coffee gets to our facility, it's done on a very specific timetable and process. It's the grinding is freshly ground. When we nitrogen seal, it all happens in line. When you open like a bag like this, I mean, you open it up and it smells like it fills the room and it smells like freshly ground coffee, and that's wasn't easy, but it's a really simple thing to enjoy now. And I say a lot of innovations, the simplest things in life are often the most complicated to achieve. This was really
Yeah.
complicated to figure out, but now it's really simple for people.
So,
It smells
so
amazing.
the aroma wasn't there at one point.
Yeah, I mean, we had to really tweak things to get it to be where it needed to be. And we had to innovate stuff that didn't exist and build stuff and tweak and test and test and test
Good
and
for you, man.
and we got it to the point where it was like not yet or not quite there to right on. Like you nailed
Oh,
it, you know?
I know that journey. It just
Yeah,
I'm so happy for you because I know the stress and anxiety and clusterfuck up in your head that happens
yeah,
going through that. It's exciting, but it's
yeah.
also frustrating, right?
It's like months to get
Yeah.
MVP products done, and then all of a sudden you try and it falls on its face, and you're like, okay, back
Yeah.
to the drawing board, or hey, let's try these. Um, and we've been through it all. I mean, my my first pitch for this was to a major luxury hotel, and I was in my hotel at 4 a.m. Stapling 30 bags together with like mini
Yep.
staples, and I served coffee to this boardroom of suits, and they decided to abandon Nespresso solution that they had already picked for the room and switch out steeped. And they were
Congratulations.
drinking like a cup full of staples. It was ridiculous. It was just the concept of this is what it is and this is what's coming, but they got to try it with where we were headed with it. We just
Yep.
hadn't been able to cap off the commercialization of it yet. And once we nailed that part, then it was like good to go. We ended up losing it because the one guy who wasn't in the room, I had to send him coffee, and he's like, "No, this is ridiculous. You sent me stapled bags." Like, so we lost it. But it actually just a couple weeks ago came back around,
Awesome.
and it was really funny story. So, but it's like stuff like that's super fun. So you test things, you make
After the
stuff.
fact. It's always fun after the fact, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
after you've gone through
I'm still
it.
actually having fun in the moment. I'm a little, a little weird in that sense, um, but now we've got something that we're really proud of. We're able to do it in a way that's affordable for our roasters. We're able to honor their coffee and the way it deserves. And we're able to offer a product that's really convenient, and
Hmm.
it combines that convenience and the quality in a really simple way without a machine needed. So there's no upfront barrier to entry. You don't have to go buy a $100, $200 machine or whatever. You don't have to have the machine get all moldy on you or clean it. It's like French press in a cup. You put it
Yep.
in, you pour over. Like
Oh
you make
yeah.
your coffee. When you're done, you throw it out, and it's non-GMO, all renewable, compostable materials, and we call it guilt-free packaging
That's awesome.
with all of our packaging because all of it's made in a way that can simply break down.
And
Uh,
how does it work? The roaster sends you the coffee, whole bean. You
yeah,
guys grind it and then
Yeah, from our licensed roaster program, we receive whole bean coffee, and then it just goes through the process, and we send it back out all done and branded and everything like that.
and
So
is there a particular roast profile that works best? Are you looking for, if we speak in general terms, are you looking for coffees that are more a medium kind of roast or lighter or darker?
I would say different roasts perform differently, and people are tweaking the roast for the method, which is really fun to see now, and
Oh
even
yeah.
creating manuals for like this is what we found, and really take it to the next level. Um, and the darker the coffee, obviously, the faster the flavor comes out.
Hmm.
And but the lighter the coffee, you're getting more of a journey with it. So it's really comes down to preference. It's really forgiving. It kind of works across the board. So it's not a narrow type of coffee that works. It really is open to the method is open to variety,
Hmm.
and can really play well with a lot of different coffees. So it's pretty fun. Um,
I
uh,
can't wait to try it. It's going to
yeah,
become my new traveling companion, no
yeah.
doubt.
For me, it started off as like everyone when I was first pitching this to friends and family, they're like, "Oh my gosh, like I need this now for my camping trip," and now it's turned into uh, every morning I wake up and this is my habit, and and I'm all about grinding and weighing and picking my favorite brewing apparatus, and
Uh-huh.
and I don't mind cleaning it up, but I also really enjoy when my wife is wants her coffee before she's out of bed because we've got a couple little ones, and
Uh-huh.
she gotta go once she goes, and she started off as my like biggest critic. She's like, no, this is go make me my espresso and do the whole 9 yards. And now it's like, no, I just want to steeped every day exactly how I like it, and this is how I do it, right? And it's so easy. Uh,
Yeah.
and in the middle of the day at work, making a cup, you can not have to go to a special cup. It's like you don't have to like go down the road or go do a whole process. You just throw a bag in a cup, pour some water over it. So people are always asking me, what are the use cases? And I'm like, well, do you like coffee? Do you drink coffee? That's the use case. Um, you don't need a machine. All you need is hot water, so it can go with you anywhere you want to go. So it totally solves the camping, travel,
Hmm.
airplane, problem. Um,
You
and
don't need a grinder on the go. I'm
I mean, nothing. I mean, even so, Nate, our director of marketing, he was off the grid after his last startup. Deep,
okay.
deep. He came in for a little visit, gave him some packs, sent him back out, and he came back after that trek and basically was like, I mean, this stuff. Say, give me a job. I'm ready to work again. Like, turned down big offers and said, this is what I want to do. Like, this
Yeah.
is like Patagonia of coffee.
Yeah,
Like
wow.
because the deeper you go, the better it got, in the woods.
Oh yeah.
He actually helped him conserve water because he didn't have to bring the gear or
Yep.
clean his French press. He just, he's still packed out and everything, but it's all dry at that point and really minimalistic on weight and materials. So,
Well, the convenience alone is really cool.
yeah,
And the fact that you have less guilt with that if you're traveling because, you know, you've gone to so much trouble to make sure that it doesn't harm the planet. I mean,
yeah,
it's still a consumable product, but it's far less of a problem than a Keurig,
yeah.
who I should add have come out and said they wish they didn't invent what they did.
The founder, yeah, not the company.
The founder, not the company. They are laughing all the way to the bank, but the founder came out and said this was not a good move, which
Yeah.
I absolutely get.
And,
The
and and they followed innovation, and that's in its own right. They capitalized on a niche and a need in the market, and
Yep.
success has shown that that was a correct valuation. And for us, we just want to come in and kind of I don't know if they really foresaw the impact negatively it would have. So, oftentimes we just get excited about an idea and hop in and don't do the homework to kind of figure out its
Right.
impact. And I and if I was in their position early on, I don't know if I would have, I hope I would have recognized that. But sometimes you just go all in. And I think for me, seeing that from a distance gave me a reference point and a foundation to say, okay, here's this. There is a need for it. People do want that convenience. They love coffee. And now, how can we do this but redeemed?
But our,
And
our culture was at a different place as well, right? Because the global cultural focus wasn't on sustainability and climate impact. as intently as it is now.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
the
We're all
patent
aware.
came
Yeah.
up, and then everyone was ready to go the day after the patent was expired. Um, is it 20 years the patent he had the patent for, something like that?
Yeah.
Um, and so if you think about it, 20 or 30 years ago, our climate focus wasn't anywhere close to what it is now, and you can only innovate in alignment with where cultural focus is, because you've got to have customers that are prepared to take up what you're putting out into the market.
Yeah. So hopefully, what we're my hope is that there's now another
Yes.
where there was one real main solution
Yeah.
for single serve, there is now a second one, and there's another option
Right.
for people. And I'd love to see that shelf space be taken back over, because this can be used easily and more sustainably at home, at work, at hospital locations, at on airlines,
Hmm.
at and it's basically giving you a product that's superior on quality, freshness, and all of these things, but also from an environmental aspect.
Yeah.
Um, and then without all the additional equipment. And I might add that the additional equipment actually recycles a lot worse than the pods themselves.
I
Um,
can imagine.
so
The other great thing about it is, particularly when you're traveling on airplanes and trains and whatnot, the comfort of having something that tastes exactly like when you brew it at home.
yeah, and what you're used to,
Yeah, that can mean so much when you're in a different country. It's one of those things of, when I travel, I would love to drink coffee, but it's on a plane, I just won't inflict that pain on myself. It's just not worth it. I take my
we,
own tea bags.
we get a lot of Instagram post of our Instagram's kind of just taking a life of its own at
I can
Steep
imagine.
Coffee, but it's uh, people are sending us shots on the plane steeping like all of their specialty coffee that they from whatever town they're in that they're getting it from, and it's hilarious where people are taking this product. It's really fun to watch.
Oh, I can imagine. Did
People are like,
you?
"Thank you so much." Like my daughter told me about this, and then I took it to like on the plane and ended up in Japan, and like now like we're getting photos from all over the globe, and it's actually
Oh,
launched
that's so
into
wonderful.
multiple countries or Canada, Australia, uh, Dubai, Netherlands, Paris, France. I mean, you name it. There's companies that we're partnering up with to do it in those areas. So it's really fun to kind of see it take on that life.
And will you set up in those countries, or will you distribute to those countries?
We have models for both, just depending
Awesome.
on what's needed. So yeah,
Yeah, a couple of people from Australia have contacted me asking me to connect them with you.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, send them over. We're always our biz dev team and are phenomenal to work with. We have a really nice process to help bring people through. It's really smooth, and we really like to support all of our partners. So we're just big on relationships, whether it's farmers or whether it's partners or whether it's employees or whether it's customers. There's real opportunity to have relationship with people through business and through what we're working on, and um, to kind of like share that out. So,
that's
uh,
so exciting.
yeah, yeah.
Where do you see Steeped going?
Um, I kind of, um, I want to see it as a standard method. I mean, there's loose tea out there, but typically speaking, people will, and I love loose tea. I'm not, but um, people like the convenience aspect of in a bag.
Hmm.
I would love to see that adopted from the steep method for within coffee, and continuing to build out these relationships and offer this product in this way. So I definitely see it, just continuing to grow out in that sense. And I also see the packaging stuff we're doing is really impactful. Um,
How do you see that translate outside of Steeped?
Yeah, so we have a steeped packaging arm now, that we just launched out. We just launched two new films that we created for CPG companies to the market, and we're starting to get business with with printers and with all kinds of different people looking to have our films for their products. So that's really fun because that's where we're able to make even a bigger impact beyond what we're currently doing in coffee. And coffee is a big enough space on its own, but
Yeah.
you know,
Okay.
but to even have more of an impact is really special. And it's we're not really losing focus from that because we need to develop it for ourselves anyway because it doesn't exist for our standards. So as we're developing this new packaging standard for ourselves, it's like, well, we've got this great thing we're spending all this time and energy on. Let's make it available to other people so they can benefit from it too, and they can help their brands have that kind of sustainability uh, edge and and what they're doing. So we're a B Corp too.
Hmm.
So anything we can do to kind of build community and education and help the environment and we're a benefit corp legally, so we're actually legally allowed to pursue purpose as well as profits.
Hmm.
But we're also aligned with B Corp as a B Corp certified third party company, which ask a million questions and make sure that
Yeah.
we're dialed in and legit and basically putting walking the walk, not just talking the talk. And that's a big part of what we do is we really try to lead through not marketing or greenwashing, but just doing things really well and then just talking about them. and that
Oh
should
yeah.
and that should be enough, so.
You know what you've got to get into? I'll tell you this off air. I've got an idea for you.
Okay,
I'll
cool.
I'll tell it to you.
Hey.
That's the thing about people like us. We sit there and we hear and we could like,
Cheers.
yeah. Let me just write it down. So, uh, fantastic.
Well,
It's
I was at a restaurant yesterday. I can't turn off my mind, and I was totally
I
eavesdropping
can't relate at all.
this summer camp, talking about all of this stuff, and I was like, oh, I can't help it. And I was like, guys, do you mind if I interrupt? And I was like, on these 3 points, these are and they're like,
Who are you?
but then all gave me business cards and were like, actually, those are really good point. Thanks. Like, sorry, I can't turn it off.
Yeah, tell me about. I've got a couple of business ideas that I really want to move on. Really, really want to move on. They will. One of them is like the next Uber.
Nice,
It's that big.
nice.
And I'm like, Lee, you must pull
So,
back,
yeah, focus.
focus on what you're doing. You've got these two brands that you're working on right now. Let them get to the point where they can fly. There's still so much to learn from what I'm doing.
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
then go with the next one.
I can identify. Yeah.
I'm sure you can.
I mean, and I shared this with you a little bit yesterday
Sixth attempt.
on our mock trial. Um, but you know, I think there's a real maturity for um, that I've experienced in my own kind of my overcoming my own faults.
Hmm.
That you have an idea and then you just want to see it started, and the satisfaction of seeing it started is really enough, and you want someone else to like finish
Yep.
it off. So uh, building into the maturity of actually like for me was to start it, but then also see it through
Yes.
and carry out. So I get to do that a lot in different ventures and stuff early on, but this is the first one where I've been kind of all in to fully commit. I'm gonna be seeing this one through, for a very long time. And some of the stuff early on, it was good. I didn't see it through because I can't imagine
Being
still
associated with it.
still
Yeah.
putting all of my energy into something that maybe I shouldn't have, right? So it's like it's definitely picking the right one is very important. Um,
It can be, well, it not can be, it is.
yeah,
Being all in is exhausting.
yeah, yeah,
It's energizing at the same time, but when you're sitting there thinking, okay, do I have what it takes? Do I want to contribute everything that I have to this?
yeah,
And sometimes the exhaustion is just not worth it. People come to me with ideas all the time and like, can you get involved in this? And I'm like, most of the time it's no,
yeah,
because there's just not enough. I see it like a ball of energy that lives within you and you can keep growing it and feeding it and rejuvenating it. but it's
Yeah.
still got to go to the right places. Otherwise, it just zaps you.
Yeah. And balance is tough to find on its own, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm constantly working on that with,
I don't know how you do it with a family.
sleep and family. And I'm trying to be, and it's challenging. I mean, God willing sort of thing. I mean, I go back pretty regularly to that source to kind of power through stuff. Kind of not on my own power, but like, I mean, I'm fully committing to the company and what's happening and growing that and stewarding employees and making sure that we have funding and things can grow and people have jobs and that everyone's not only has jobs but are happy at their jobs and
Yeah.
but then at the same time to no one to have boundaries and do the same exact thing with the same amount of energy and focus on my family to make sure my kids are healthy and my wife's thriving and has what she needs and feels supported and on every level, and it's like, that's tough to tote that line and still have, don't really have a life right now, but like,
I'm scared.
and,
Yeah,
like
you're
still go
wishful
find,
thinking.
but then you still also have to take care of yourself, right? So you got to be healthy and, uh,
Mental health as well as physical health, gut health.
so, yeah, I used to not sleep. I can thrive on a few hours, 3, 4 hours a night, and um,
Short term, anyway, but long
yeah,
term.
yeah. I mean, I did it too much,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
I'm actually working on in my life now, not to like glorify that, but really to say that's something that I was doing that wasn't healthy and it's something I'm actually working on in my life, right? So
Yeah.
it's like I'm trying to find that balance as well. I say that after I told you before we started that I pulled an all-nighter last night today, but it's
But
rare
that's an
now.
exception, right?
It's rare now compared to what it used to be.
I
Uh,
used to take so much glory in the, well, I don't live on any sleep, blah, blah, blah. Now I prioritize sleep.
yeah, it's so important. From a
Absolutely.
and I want to be around to enjoy all the things I'm building now.
Yep.
Um,
And your kids and your
yeah,
family and all
exactly.
of that.
Yep. So I think, finding time for myself is something I've been doing recently, and I think that's a growth area I'm having as a, business owner, entrepreneur, family person is just making sure I'm like exercising and, you know, and then also getting home and getting time with the family and being regular and like really investing
Present.
there, present, but also getting sleep, but getting up and it, for me, it's just been like there's always stuff to do. You're never going to get it all done. You just have to trust. For me, in my own faith walk, it's trusting that, you know, God's got this, and I'm not doing anything on my own power, and that I can not be in control, and that's okay. Like I can hand over those reins because I've got something worthy behind me, and as a foundation, and I can let things be for the next day, trusting that I'm going to get done what I need to get done, and as I continue to rely on God anyway, it's like, you know, God shows up in ways that I could never uh, orchestrate, and in way more efficient ways when I'm relying on that kind of uh, thing.
Uh huh.
So for me, that's you know, there's been a lot of tough times with this business.
Gee,
Like
I can't
from,
imagine what.
from early on, just having that conversation with my wife. Like, I think this is the one.
Yep.
Are you ready to? Can we go all in? This might be we're going to be totally done, or and have to start over, or this
It's
might
going to be millions at the end. Yeah. At the
there's
end of the
something,
stretch. Yep.
or at least just worth it, right? That there's going to be success in it and success defined in multiple ways. But like, she's like, I believe in this one, and more so. And it's like we made that decision early on, like we're all in, and that came through a huge faith journey,
Yep.
has been hand in hand with the entire business because I entered it through a lot of like seeking wise counsel and relationships with people, but also prayer and like, um, just through my personal relationship with Jesus and all that kind of stuff on a daily basis. Like that conversation in my head is never ending with like where we're at with things and like trying to navigate waters on every aspect. And early on, I mean, it got really tough. I mean, I was feeling called to do things in a very specific way.
Hmm.
And every time I would get challenged to follow through in that specific way, and I would be given very easy outs to go a different way than I was being called to. And so, kind of like you're never tempted with bread when you're full. It's always when you're starving. It's like
Yeah.
you got to be very like those are the moments where you're actually challenged and you get to see
Yeah.
how am I going to react and what's my character going to be in this situation. And we get to the point where I came home one day and Christy's like, I don't have any. Do you have any quarters? I can't do laundry. And I'm like, babe, I can't get you a quarter.
Yep.
We do not have a quarter I can provide to you. Like, there's zero
Exactly.
cash. Like, I can go buy you dinner on our car, but like, we're done. Like, and we just started laughing. We're like, we did it. We're like startup life, and
Yes.
and like,
And it's so bizarre the reaction you have to that.
yeah,
It's and I'm not a religious person, but I absolutely believe I came from a religious background.
yeah,
I was Catholic, and I'm very consciousness focused, and the beautiful. I use this word in a different sense that most people use it. It's a beautiful spiritual journey being an entrepreneur.
yeah,
And by spirit, I mean diving into one's deepest levels of consciousness and
yeah,
evolution and way beyond this,
yeah,
what you see here,
yeah.
the human spirit. And those
There,
moments,
there's a fabric behind everything that's common regardless of
faith, yep,
recognition or what it's called or what someone
yep,
identifies with. And there's a common fabric of, you know,
divinity,
of like hitting the mark or being off of the mark, right?
yeah,
And it's a thread that you can recognize because people can recognize the difference between feeling in line and feeling off.
yeah,
And that kind of brushstroke runs through history. And
absolutely.
you can see it in the human history, but you can also see it in your own personal
Hmm.
history of life. And so like that tapping into that common yeah, I wouldn't consider myself a religious person either.
Yep.
And I've always almost rejected that
There's a real
side of
movement around that, especially in Christianity, actually.
I mean I
Moving away from the religious elements of it and being, like you call it, faith based.
yeah, I mean there's a huge so I mean, I used to be able to talk my biblical religious friends in high school under the table in the face, and they'd be like crying at the end of the night, and we'd stay up all night, like, hey, let's not stop now. Let me just bury this, But like, but now that uh, um, I'm not approaching it from uh, the personal relationship side of things
Yeah.
is what turned it in. It's like that personal relationship I have with God, where it's like, this isn't about me. This isn't on my own power. This is me like choosing, like, I can't do this on my own. Like, oh, I want to do this with, like choosing to, here's my heart, and like, let's walk through this
Yeah.
relationship and through this journey. That's what made the difference for me because it wasn't in your head or doing stuff right or wrong or judgment or like, like being good enough or like fitting into like the churchy like ways. It was
Ethos and
I have a personal relationship and that doesn't go away no matter where I am, like whether I'm at church or whether I'm at home or whether I'm at work or there's no boundaries to that, there's no walls. It's just
it's authentic.
you just get something I just get to daily be part of, and that's for me that's what carries me through a lot of challenging times because um, I've got something of a foundation where everything above that is like kind of it's almost silly sometimes where you're like yeah like I can really unpack it when I get really introspective and be like this is just fun, and at the end of it all, like there's a foundation there that it's solid, and like
And it's for you. It's
and it's
not
for me.
for anybody else. Like
Yeah,
that, I
yeah,
feel
it
like
doesn't
that's
matter.
the difference
Yep.
about being religious and being faith based. Religion is all about that forcing it onto other people,
Yeah.
whereas your faith is about you. I remember when we started Elixir, and I turned and said to one of my business partners, I said to him, Karim, I feel as though Elixir has come through me, and it was gifted to me through some divine source.
Yeah.
And it feels like I feel a heavy responsibility
Yeah.
to deliver this
And
in a
Stuart.
way that's,
Yeah.
I'm the steward of it.
Yeah.
And I don't consider myself, and as I said, I'm not a religious person, and my background in both like a heavy Christian or a heavy Catholic upbringing, as well as science through my degree, and this, I went through a moment of I'm letting go of every single belief I have,
Yeah.
whether it be political, religious, moral, everything. I'm starting from scratch. I understand that I have these things because other people have told me that I have to be this way. I
Yeah.
need to rebuild myself.
It's always a good place to start. I mean,
Oh,
really,
yeah.
because uh, from those pure places come really pure things, you know. And it's like if you can remove yourself from that, it kind of just frees yourself up
Yeah.
to find that whatever's going on there, you know.
And you find it with authenticity.
Yeah.
I consider myself a seeker now. I,
Yeah.
I don't um, I don't know if God exists. I, I don't know that he doesn't exist either.
Yeah.
And that space where you're just open to everything
Yeah.
is beautiful.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I'm not discounting anything. I give it to me. I want to experience it. I want to know for this is where I thank my science degree so much,
Yeah.
because I've decided to have an open mind and an open heart about all of it.
Yeah.
And I use entrepreneurship as a journey to discover everything. So I know when something feels a certain way. I know when, I live my life by a couple of statements, but one of them is everything happens for you, not to you. And so when things weren't flowing between you and I with the technology,
Yeah.
it was so unusual that I knew, Lee, this is one of those ones you have to take notice of.
Yeah.
This is absolutely divinely inspired, whatever the fuck that means.
Yeah. And that's why I was kind of telling you like this is this is now a normal to me.
Uh-huh.
When I find that when you're pursuing things in a way that's really authentic to that kind of like that thread in
Yep.
life and you're hitting it, there's a lot of opposition to that.
Yep.
And it's just something I'm used to now. And in my own walk, uh, I've come through that same kind of like stripped down place and open to everything. And then from those moments of challenging, because I'm really stubborn. I need like God, if you exist, I really need you to show up and like hit me on the head with it once, twice, three times, because I'm gonna chalk everything up to circumstance. I'm gonna say it's because I was thinking of that happened, or because I'm
Yeah,
you
right.
know, manifesting that, or but like through that, I've personally seen like God so faithful in that way to me because everyone has their own unique, you know, I, I I have my own unique relationship there, and I've seen uh, that response to who I am in such direct, obnoxious ways that are like, come on, like I know I'm stubborn because I mean that was ridiculous. I mean, I could go into story after story after story, which has built an experience that's so tangible now that
Yeah.
it's like that relationship is such a real, vibrant thing as if you and I are talking now. With history that goes years back now.
Mm.
And for me, that's been a really encouraging thing because it's been a really special relationship, but it's gotten me through some very difficult times to keep kind of like carry on, and keep going and like um,
Especially when you can't find a quarter.
Yeah. Well, especially when you can't find a quarter.
And that's the thing. I used to call it, I'm going through the process of building an intimate relationship with myself and my environment
Yeah.
because I went, I needed to relinquish the word God.
Yeah.
It was it had too much
Toxic for people
attached.
sometimes. Yeah.
Sorry?
It's toxic for people sometimes.
Right.
There's,
It has too many connotations with it from my past.
yep.
And so I realized, like, okay, I'm seeking to experience the divine or whatever the fuck it is I want to call it,
Yeah.
the universe, and anything, right? I remember when I haven't shared this story on this podcast before, but I, it's one of those ones that you kind of think you'll leave to just the off air kind of thing, but
Yeah.
it's time to tell it.
Yeah.
I was working in the corporate world at the time, and I was going right at that point where I was detaching from everything. I was ready to figure out who I was. I was 28. I'm 44 now, and I said to I was in really bad traffic, and I said out loud, I'm like, all right, God, fuck this. If you're real, you have to show up because I'm letting go of everything I believe in. I've been taught this by people my whole life.
Yeah.
Everyone's told me what I should and shouldn't believe. It's time for me to figure that out for myself. So if you're real and as all fucking mighty and powerful as everyone says you are,
Yeah.
have a conversation with me in a way that I can't dispute it.
Yep.
And I just thought it was really funny. I'm like, this feels really good to just like let it all go. That's
Yeah.
it. I'm going to start figuring it out for myself. A couple of weeks later, I was in a bookstore and this woman comes up to me and she said to me, excuse me, you don't know me and I don't know you, but you have to buy this book. I'm
Conversation.
like, sorry? She's like, I don't know what is happening right now, but every time I walk past this book, I get this feeling like I have to give it to you so that you can buy it. If you don't buy it, I'm going to buy it for you because I feel like something bad's going to happen to me if I don't buy it for you. And I'm looking around thinking like there's Ashton Kutcher's going to show up any second and say you've been punked. I'm like, this is very strange. I took the book from her and it said Conversations with God.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, buddy, I'm listening. That's it. So I took the book and I read it and then began the journey of a cascade of such beautiful, unquestionable things that were happening to me that helped me realize that I am not going to be able to define any of this the rest of my life.
Yeah.
But the way I'm going to experience whatever this otherness is, which doesn't seem to be an other from me, but it's an other from this flatlined kind of level of one-dimensional consciousness, it is going to be an absolute fucking joy to explore this the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And I'm going to use every breath to experience it with.
Yeah.
So when Elixir came through me, I realized, after a number of years of all of these beautiful, for lack of a better word, divine things from happening, that this is why when I've spoken to people and they end up being filmmakers, they say, well, I have to make a movie about your life. It's
Yeah.
just the craziest shit, which I'm sure you can get. I'm sure you
Yeah.
understand exactly what I'm talking about. The, you couldn't write a movie about this shit and people believe it, but it happens to you. And my music director used to say, magic happens around Lee that you can't even believe when you see it. I'm like, it's not me, it's the us.
Yeah.
It's that beautiful, I can't fucking explain what's going on, but I'm welcoming it kind of thing. And it's in the moments where you're sitting there and like, I have not even got enough money to buy a bag of brown rice today. And that's awesome.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I have, I know that this is just going to figure itself out and it's not going to just do it on its own. I'm going to do the work to make it happen. But there is something that's cushioning this for me, something that is listening to me that I have no idea what it is.
Yeah. That's
but I
awesome.
have an intimate relationship with it, and it perhaps is a higher version of myself. Maybe we're operating in a sim, and there's someone who's controlling me through a sim. Hey, Smash is my favorite movie, but I tell you what, it's one of those things where if you are somebody who is truly open-minded, there is enough evidence to suggest that it is not something that you should take off the table.
Yeah, I have it's so funny that you shared that story. So, when one of my best friends from growing up, I always
Hmm.
thought he's a funny dude, and he had always said, "Read this book, read this book." And I was like, "No, no, 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 no." He's like, "Read this book." And I was like, and never did. I got through junior year of college, it just everything kind of fell apart. Like, friend died, like stuff with family went sideways just because I was being a complete idiot, and like, you know, following after my own self, basically.
Uh-huh.
And it kind of just hit this breaking point, and that's when I actually traveled to Australia. And I brought that book with me, and
Conversations with God?
I opened it up there, and it was Conversations with God, and
Wow.
and uh, and I started exploring or just challenging, kind of that foundation and fabric. And
Hmm.
that book was a gateway for me to build relationship with something else happening, which, call it what you want. Like, if you have the problem with the word God, it's like, it's, I think of God as like everything. Like,
Yeah.
I had someone tell me, you know, it was funny because I was exploring everything at that time. So it's like, I'm just open, and I'm like figuring out the world, and I want to find my
Seeking.
place, and seeking, right? So I'm reading books, and like, the little prince, or no, what's it called? The Alchemy and the
Ah,
Alchemist,
The Alchemist. Yep.
and like the Prophet
The
and
Celestine
Conversations with God,
Prophecy.
and like all these things
Yep.
expose me to like a spiritual aspect that
Yep.
I wasn't acknowledging or wanting to participate in. And then those things kind of opened me up. And then I went and saw like this like prophet psychic type woman, which I think is the weirdest stuff. And I would never do that even from a before, but like I met some guy camping. He's like, you have to go see this woman. She like basically helped find my lost sister, sort of thing. There was like this whole story
Yep.
where it was like a really weird thing. Like, uh, woman was getting her hair cut. She's like, I don't need to see you. I need to see like your friend. I have something to tell her. And then they told her like, and it was this crazy story. I won't get into it.
Wow.
I was like, well, I'll go see her. She sounds like at least she knows what she's talking about. And she basically told me about Jesus the whole time I was there. And I was like, this is weird. I have like a psychic telling me about, and she like got out Dead Sea Scrolls, and she read me this quote, and it was like, uh, split a piece of wood and you will find me, lift a stone and I am there, or something like that,
Uh-huh.
paraphrasing. And it was kind of like this concept of like, I am everywhere. I'm not this thing that you
Hmm.
despise because of people who claim to follow that you can't stand. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this is a personal thing. It's everywhere. And it's like that kind of opened me up to that. And later on, I ended up developing more of that personal relationship and kind of giving over of my heart to that, which I've then become familiar with through the characteristic of experience of what,
Hmm.
like, what that actually means. And now it's funny, now when I'm reading the Bible and things like that, I'm not arguing it. I actually see it all pretty much completely upside down as like, you know, uh, like that scripture, like I am the gate, like before I used to be like, kind of God is like keeping you out.
Yeah.
Like, but if when you like go in and you do research on that and you find out the context of that, it was like it was a
It's not a
wall.
physical gate.
But it was representing the idea of there is a wall, you have no access to God back when Jesus was around.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's like all of a sudden he's saying, oh, by the way, now there's a gate and I'm reaching my hand through it and I am literally inviting you individually through to have a personal relationship. And it's like not this judgmental barrier, but more of this open, personal, intimate invitation. And so it's like I started looking at scriptures completely differently, from almost all upside down from what I had thought they were. And it started making sense in
And
different
that's that
ways.
open-mindedness, right?
Yeah, yeah, and it was really interesting. So for me, that was a trip because I went from like being able to basically debate against it in flawlessly to to being able to actually back up and explain scripture in a way that to my previous self version of myself that was like oh, and by the way, this has this element of truth that you've experienced in your whole life and learned it the hard way, and now all of a sudden like there's all this stuff that's making sense, right? And it's like you've got this leader who's not a materialistic king, but like putting value on being a servant. The greatest among you is the least of these, and like seek first the kingdom, like not the physical kingdom, but like spiritually, and the rest is given. It's like all of these things started making sense. They were like, whoa, that's deep, right?
They're life lessons.
You
Like
know,
this,
like that's deep.
that's the cool thing about all of these kinds of scriptures, stories. My grandfather used to read the Bible to us all the time. And the Arab culture is it has such a beautiful thing about it whereby we teach through story.
Yeah,
Whether it be from the Bible, from the Quran, or from like village stories that we have.
yeah,
Song is another way that we pass stories down.
yeah,
I have such a deep love for that kind of communicating because it's such a deep philosophical culture.
yeah. It's the
And
same like that with the Aboriginal culture in Australia too. I mean,
absolutely,
everything's passed on through song, and
yeah.
the like history is sung through. It's like
But all of that is the same. Like that's the beautiful thing about it, right? The Bible and the Aboriginal story time and the cultural song singing that teaches you stories from the past. Like all of these are just a different version to me of the same thing. We're teaching humanity. We're giving people the option to hear a story and explore it
yeah,
and kind of step into their own version of humanity and take what they can from it. Because there are times in your life where you'll hear one story and then hear the same story and hear it in such a profoundly different way. I remember being in Syria and the story of, is it Job, where the mountain opened up?
uh, perhaps. Sorry, I'm looking like a
No, no, that's fine. Well, I was actually at the mountain.
no way.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Syria's where the first
Yeah,
church was. It's where all the biblical stories, a lot of them happened. And so when I was 14 and went there for the first time, and we would go on these excursions, and they would take me to these amazing scripture kind of source places
yeah,
where there was that place where I can't even remember who it was, but if you turn around, it's this same story where you just run for the mountain, don't turn back, otherwise you'll be turned to stone,
yeah,
right? And just the faith that's required to run towards this mountain that is a mountain. What are you going to do when you get to the mountain, right? And so I'd heard this story growing up, and I thought, what do you mean, like a mountain opened up and they just ran through the mountain? And when you're standing at this mountain and you're seeing the way that it kind of does this as you look up, and if someone was to push this thing together, it would perfectly fit,
hmm,
less the corrosion over the many, many thousands of years.
yeah,
You look at this, and back then I was just in awe of it.
yeah,
Now I think back to that experience very often, and I think when I equate that back to my entrepreneurial experience, it's this idea of, Lee, you've established enough of faith in yourself to head straight for that mountain and trust that it's going to open up for you. Enough times you've faced that mountain before and it has opened up and the fear was right in your throat.
yeah,
Go for it. It's
yeah,
this really beautiful way that entrepreneurship now offers me an opportunity to explore deeper versions of myself
Yeah.
that are so intimately and intrinsically linked to my journey of my own consciousness and spirit. I just don't know how you could do anything else when you can do this. It's like a drug.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's yeah, that's beautiful. So
It's one of those things where you think, I don't know what the fuck is real and what's not real, but whatever I've done previously seems to feel like I got very lucky, even when it's those months where I can't afford to buy brown rice.
yeah. And when you put yourself in those positions too, you're maybe less comfortable and more aware of your surroundings, and that's where that feeling might even, kind of stem from, that kind of adrenaline of this is great, um, but then I think we also go through different seasons where we rein that in
Mm,
and stabilize it, right? So it's like, um, and that's part of the whole thing too, and it's like just embracing that and being able to come up against, all the different fears and all the different challenges, and like the excitement of that, but also being able to like, embrace the different seasons of complete boredom and, pushing through or not having that happen. But like there's like beauty in all seasons, it's like,
all of it. You
so
start to see it all as one rather than, oh shit, what's coming next? Well,
yeah,
this is part of the next. So the next can't happen without what's going on right now.
yeah,
And the discomfort is no longer the focus, it's the gratitude from, or the gratitude for the discomfort that becomes the focus.
yeah,
Because, beyond that, doing that hard shit comes this beautiful aftermath.
yeah, yeah. It's
We're very
yeah,
lucky.
yeah. The journey is definitely a fun part of the whole thing, and
Yep.
it's not just where you're going, but where how you're getting there and all that kind of stuff. So
What a great place to wrap up 2 hours worth of an awesome
yeah,
conversation.
yeah.
Just like that.
Oh, we're on a podcast. Sorry, I was just talking to you here.
People say to me before we start off, and they're like, I'm really nervous, like I don't know what's going to happen. I'm like, I swear 5 minutes in you're going to forget that we're on a podcast and we're just going to have a conversation, and 2 hours is going to go in no time.
Yeah,
So dude, this was an absolute pleasure.
yeah,
An
same.
absolute pleasure. Thank you for coming on the podcast. I can't wait to taste steeped coffee. I'm going to send you some elixir as well.
Yep.
And if people want to get in contact with you so that they can start serving steeped coffee in their stores, how do they get in contact with you?
So check out the website. It's steeped, 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 coffee, .com. And you can email info@steepedcoffee.com or sales@steepedcoffee.com or whatever it is that, someone's trying to pursue. There's all kinds of stuff on the website. We actually just put up a partners link up on the top.
Great.
People can get some information depending on whether they're in a roaster or, hospitality or whatever channel you might be pursuing. So we can connect up that way. And there's some more information there. If you want to just try steeped coffee, the website's great. You can easily get, 10 pack. We have a 10-pack variety, which I recommend. It's 2 packs of each of the five. And you get a little bit of everything. That's a fun way to try it.
That's awesome.
Or to like reach out to your local roasters and make sure they don't have it, right? Because
Yeah.
we'll be putting up some more roaster resources on our website, so you can really see that's kind of one of the things happening this next quarter. Um, but there's a lot of awesome roasters, and growing, who are utilizing this method. So, and then packaging, same thing through the website if that's all, something interesting. But yeah, go check out the story and what we're doing. And thanks for spending a few hours with us here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for giving so generously of your story, and thank you for everyone that stuck with us for 2 hours. It was they're used to this. We have some conversations that go for 3 hours, and are very dense with coffee talk about the sea market and things like that, and very intense. But this was a joy.
I
Thank you
can
so much, sir.
I can go deep on that stuff too. It's funny that the C market just came up in a conversation, not to derail your ending,
No, no, that's fine.
with Jared Truby over at Cat and Cloud.
Yeah,
Really kind of looking at creative ways to approach people who are being going through real tough times with that price right now. And there's companies reporting record profits, and there's farmers like ripping out plants and not knowing what they're going to do with their lives. So we're trying to look at not just focusing on specialty coffee, but are there some creative ways that we can team up to do some really quality specialty roast, but to kind of support and bring up sea market type farmers at a price that's going to help them survive and live.
that's wonderful.
Yeah, depending on the topic, I could talk coffee all day, but I like the direction we just randomly went into. So
It's
this is awesome.
this is not going to be the last time we're going to have a
Yeah,
conversation on this podcast. I feel that you're going to be somebody that I want to have back, and people are going to say, "When are you going to have Josh Wilbur back?"
perfect. Yeah,
So
anytime.
you're
So,
welcome anytime, friend.
I'll
And I'll talk to you soon.
appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Take care. See you later.
Take care. Bye.